Google's nuclear energy strategy for data centers. Google signed a deal to purchase electricity from a non-water-cooled nuclear reactor in Tennessee to power its data centers, marking the first commercial agreement for a new generation of nuclear technology that promises to eliminate meltdowns and slash construction costs. While the Google deal marks a breakthrough for next-generation nuclear technology, industry analysts warned that these new reactors face significant hurdles that could limit their availability to most companies. Advanced nuclear reactors cannot scale fast enough to be part of the near-term enterprise energy mix, said Sanchit Gogia, chief analyst and CEO at Greyhound Research. Licensing hurdles, decade-long construction cycles, and community resistance mean that meaningful deployments will materialize only in the 2030s, Gogia said. Hyperscalers like Google, Microsoft, and Amazon can shoulder first-of-a-kind costs via 20 to 40-year power purchase agreements and accept reputational exposure linked to early adoption, Gogia said. Most other enterprises do not have the balance sheet, political capital, or regulatory bandwidth to do the same. These moves are not symbolic. They're designed to guarantee firm, carbon-free baseload power in an era where digital infrastructure depends on energy certainty, Gogia said. Smaller enterprises will be dependent on conventional renewable contracts or volatile grid electricity, and hyperscalers will inevitably pass through their nuclear-backed stability as embedded advantages in cloud pricing, Gogia added. Nuclear power offered stability rather than low cost. Nuclear procurement is less about cheap energy than about predictable costs, Gogia said. In a world where grid electricity prices are volatile and renewable PPAs are rising in cost, nuclear's promise is not the lowest price but stability. As quoted in Network World, in an article authored by Gyana Swain published on August 19, 2025. Beyond the media quote, our view in full. Press for time? You can focus solely on the Greyhound flashpoints that follow. Each one distills the full analysis into a sharp, executive-ready takeaway, combining our official standpoint, validated through Pulse data from ongoing CXO trackers, and grounded in field notes from real-world advisory engagements. Evaluating nuclear partnerships in data center strategy. Greyhound Flashpoint. Nuclear power remains an enticing yet asymmetric proposition for data centers. Greyhound Research has highlighted that while small modular reactors, SMRs, promise clean, around-the-clock baseload energy aligned with the relentless growth of AI, the benefits remain mostly aspirational. Unresolved issues around nuclear waste disposal, siting, regulatory approvals, and governance temper enthusiasm. Per Greyhound CIO Pulse 2025, 54% of CIOs globally report hesitancy to commit to long-gestation energy technologies without proven commercial track records. For now, nuclear sits firmly in the category of strategic hedges rather than operational mainstays, particularly given that meaningful deployments are unlikely before the 2030s. Greyhound standpoint. According to Greyhound Research, enterprises must treat nuclear partnerships as bets on long-term stability rather than short-term procurement. Hyperscalers like Google, Microsoft, and Amazon can shoulder first-of-a-kind, FOAK, costs via 20 to 40-year power purchase agreements, PPAs, and accept reputational exposure linked to early adoption. Most other enterprises do not have the balance sheet, political capital, or regulatory bandwidth to do the same. For them, pooled procurement and sovereign utility consortia represent the most viable path. Nuclear will not replace renewables or grid contracts. Instead, it will function as a long-horizon hedge, complementing hybrid energy portfolios in regions where infrastructure is already under acute strain. Greyhound Pulse. Greyhound CIO Pulse 2025 shows that while 39% of technology decision-makers view nuclear as a future stabilizer, only 12% currently hold board-level approval for active exploration. This reflects governance caution in markets across North America, Europe, and Asia. While renewables and hybrid PPAs remain the present focus, nuclear's role is being debated as part of long-term board strategies. Decision-makers acknowledge nuclear's potential to deliver stable and carbon-free power, but remain mindful that timelines and risks do not align with current capacity expansion cycles. Greyhound Field Note. Per a recent Greyhound Field Note from a European financial services firm, the board walked away from discussions with the reactor consortium after regulators raised concerns over licensing delays and reputational exposure. The CIO argued that nuclear was essential to hedge against volatile grid prices, but the General Counsel stressed the litigation and community risks of backing unlicensed designs. This is consistent with global trends. In Asia and North America, nuclear pilots have faced opposition from regulators, local communities, and activist groups, demonstrating that even well-capitalized projects are slowed by governance and perception hurdles. Will nuclear investments create a corporate divide? Greyhound Flashpoint. Hyperscalers are seizing nuclear partnerships as strategic moats. Greyhound Research has observed how Google, Microsoft, Amazon, and Oracle are locking in SMR capacity as part of their AI energy strategies. These moves are not symbolic. They're designed to guarantee firm, carbon-free baseload power in an era where digital infrastructure depends on energy certainty. Per Greyhound CIO Pulse 2025, 46% of CIOs now fear being structurally disadvantaged if nuclear remains exclusive to hyperscalers. This risk is materializing as a nuclear-driven energy divide that could reshape competitiveness in AI and cloud markets. Greyhound Standpoint. According to Greyhound Research, the nuclear advantage will remain concentrated in hyperscalers for the foreseeable future. These firms can absorb long-term FOAK costs, influence vendor design, and negotiate multi-decade PPAs that mid-tier firms cannot. Smaller enterprises will be dependent on conventional renewable contracts or volatile grid electricity, and hyperscalers will inevitably pass through their nuclear-backed stability as embedded advantages in cloud pricing. Unless utilities and governments intervene to extend nuclear access, the result will be a deepening gap in AI capacity, where nuclear becomes both a sustainability marker and a performance moat. Greyhound Pulse. Greyhound CIO Pulse 2025 highlights that 58% of CIOs globally consider energy sourcing a critical differentiator in AI adoption strategies, up from just 33% 2 years ago. Of these, 44% cite hyperscaler-exclusive nuclear contracts as the most significant barrier to competitive parity. Energy provenance has moved from a sustainability talking point to a procurement criterion, now explicitly factored into cloud requests for proposals, RFPs, across Europe, Asia, and North America. This shift underscores how energy strategy is becoming synonymous with digital competitiveness. Greyhound Field Note. Per a Greyhound Field Note from a U.S. healthcare provider, executives voiced frustration that hyperscaler-exclusive nuclear contracts effectively embedded a nuclear premium into their cloud bills. While the stability benefited hyperscalers, mid-market buyers absorb higher costs without direct access to the underlying baseload energy. In Europe, regulators blocked similar nuclear-linked contracts after concerns were raised that smaller players would be structurally disadvantaged. These examples illustrate a global friction. Nuclear-backed energy is consolidating into a hyperscaler club, with regulators struggling to ensure fairness for broader enterprise adoption. Long-term cost implications of risk-sharing models. Greyhound Flashpoint. Nuclear procurement is less about cheap energy than about predictable costs. Greyhound Research has consistently flagged that SMRs carry high upfront capital requirements and multi-year payback horizons. Per Greyhound CIO Pulse 2025, 42% of CIOs believe nuclear PPAs could ultimately prove more expensive than diversified renewable portfolios over 20 years. Yet enterprises are increasingly willing to pay for predictability. In a world where grid electricity prices are volatile and renewable PPAs are rising in cost, nuclear's promise is not lowest price but stability. Greyhound Standpoint. According to Greyhound Research, nuclear will remain premium-priced relative to solar and wind through this decade. Hyperscalers are absorbing FOAK costs via long-term PPAs in expectation that unit costs will fall as deployments mature into nth-of-a-kind (NOAK) production. Enterprises must diversify rather than bet entirely on nuclear. Renewable PPAs, hybrid grid sourcing, and efficiency gains should dominate near-term strategy, with nuclear considered a hedge against volatility rather than a discount path. For AI-intensive workloads, paying above market rates may still be justified if nuclear delivers stability and compliance with net zero targets. Greyhound Pulse. Greyhound CIO Pulse 2025 shows that 51% of CIOs now prioritize predictability of cost over absolute lowest cost in their data center energy strategy. Only 19% believe nuclear will undercut renewables within the next decade. This sentiment spans geographies. CIOs in North America and Asia point to nuclear's value as a hedge, while European respondents cite ongoing doubts over licensing timelines. The common thread is that nuclear's near-term appeal lies in its ability to insulate operations from volatility rather than deliver cost leadership. Greyhound Field Note. Per a Greyhound Field Note from an Asia-Pacific telco, negotiations for a nuclear-linked PPA were terminated after internal analysis showed costs nearly 30% higher than renewables over a 20-year horizon. The CIO argued for stable pricing to protect AI workloads from grid shocks, while the CFO highlighted that the premium risked undermining competitiveness in retail markets. Similar frictions have surfaced in the U.S., where regulators blocked attempts by hyperscalers to expand behind-the-meter nuclear supply on fairness grounds. These examples highlight a recurring theme. Nuclear stabilizes costs but introduces structural inequities and potential long-term competitiveness risks. Can advanced nuclear scale to meet data center demand? Greyhound Flashpoint. Greyhound Research has recognized nuclear as critical to the long-term ambitions of global data centers. Its scale challenge is undeniable. The projected 85 to 90 gigawatts of new demand by 2030 far outpaces nuclear's realistic contribution in that timeframe. Per Greyhound CIO Pulse 2025, 63% of CIOs globally doubt SMRs will scale beyond pilot projects this decade. Nuclear will remain concentrated in hyperscaler hedging strategies rather than mainstream enterprise procurement. Greyhound Standpoint. According to Greyhound Research, advanced nuclear cannot scale fast enough to be part of the near-term enterprise energy mix. Licensing hurdles, decade-long construction cycles, and community resistance mean that meaningful deployments will materialize only in the 2030s. Hyperscalers with sovereign backing will dominate early SMR deployments through proprietary PPAs. For most enterprises, practical strategies will revolve around renewable PPAs, regional grid arbitrage, and efficiency-driven optimization until nuclear becomes a scalable option. Greyhound Pulse. Greyhound CIO Pulse 2025 highlights that only 8% of CIOs include nuclear in their active energy planning cycles, despite 47% recognizing its potential beyond 2030. Enterprises today remain focused on solar plus storage integration, wind procurement, and more efficient data center architectures. Nuclear is acknowledged as a long-term necessity, but not an actionable lever for current capacity buildouts. Greyhound Field Note. Per a Greyhound Field Note from a Middle Eastern sovereign wealth fund, an SMR campus project intended to anchor a regional AI hub was delayed nearly a decade due to licensing bottlenecks and local resistance. In Europe, similar pilot projects have stalled under community opposition. These failures confirm a broader truth. Nuclear scalability is constrained not by technology alone, but by regulatory and societal acceptance. For now, nuclear remains a promise for the 2030s, while the 2020s will be powered by renewables, grids, and efficiency measures. Analyst in focus. Sanchit Gogia. Sanchit Gogia, or SVG as he is popularly known, is a globally recognized technology analyst, innovation strategist, digital consultant, and board advisor. SVG is the chief analyst, founder and CEO of Greyhound Research, a global, award-winning technology research, advisory, consulting, and education firm. Greyhound Research works closely with global organizations, their CXOs, and the board of directors on technology and digital transformation decisions. SVG is also the founder and CEO of the House of Greyhound, an eclectic venture focusing on interdisciplinary innovation. Copyright policy. All content contained on the Greyhound Research website is protected by copyright law and may not be reproduced, distributed, transmitted, displayed, published, or broadcast without the prior written permission of Greyhound Research, or, in the case of third-party materials, the prior written consent of the copyright owner of that content. You may not alter, delete, obscure, or conceal any trademark, copyright, or other notice appearing in any Greyhound Research content. We request our readers not to copy Greyhound Research content and not republish or redistribute them, in whole or partially, via emails or republishing them in any media, including websites, newsletters, or intranets. We understand that you may want to share this content with others, so we've added tools under each content piece that allow you to share the content. If you have any questions, please get in touch with our community relations team at connect@thoffer.com.